Hello, everyone. Miles here from Tech Circus, joined today by Tatiana Zander, who's Director of Disruptive Technologies at Ericsson. We'll be having another preliminary interview for the upcoming Metaverse Day, this January 24th and 25th, where Tatiana is going to be joining us. So welcome, Tatiana. It's great to have you here.
Awesome, Mal. It's so great to be here.
Amazing. I'd love for you to give me sort of a brief highlight of your backgrounds and what does this role of Director of Disruptive Technologies mean for a telecom like Ericsson?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I've been now, I think, 13 years at Ericsson. It's still my first job out of school, and I'm still loving it. And I keep developing with the company. I used to be a developer, so I like to wear that hat as well. I've done software development in cloud and AI for like probably 7, 8 years or so before I moved into the more PowerPoint side of the business. And basically, what I do now is I'm based in our Silicon Valley side here in California. And I report into the North American CTO and get the pleasure of looking into the kind of less mainstream technologies. And I love this area because it describes more like the up and coming stuff, and therefore you can also shape it better. So I love the liberties that I get through that.
That's awesome. Yeah, getting the kind of inside scoop on the 5-year out vision, right? And I think that's a really exciting place to be. So obviously, Ericsson being predominantly a telecom company, when we look at this concept of the Metaverse, which is the event you're going to be joining us for, telecom and telecommunications is going to be providing this connectivity layer, which is the kind of technology underpinning the Metaverse. So I was hoping you could provide some insights into the importance of this layer for the Metaverse, especially in the context of Ericsson's focus on innovation and your own perspective as a leader in disruptive technologies.
For sure. Let's start with why do we need connectivity in the Metaverse? So I'm thinking, when we all think back, I think a huge impact in shaping, oh, the metaverse is going to be a big thing and things are going to happen with that is back when Pokemon Go first came out. And I loved that application. I was addicted to it. Like I would go outside all the time. I would go to the gatherings and walk through the entire city. Back then I lived still in Germany, and you realized really quickly the limitations of the network, right? When you went to big gatherings, all of a sudden your app would crash all the time. And I think Niantic did an amazing job in terms of setting and figuring out the first architecture needed for, hey, what happens on the phone and what happens on the mobile network side? Where do we rely on internet connectivity? And a lot of learnings were made. And I think the metaverse wouldn't be where it is today if those learnings wouldn't have been made back then. So from there, you see there's like a difference in like, how does my connectivity perform indoors at home? And how does my connectivity perform when I'm outside? And what type of applications work outside and what type of applications work inside? And the interesting thing is Ericsson contributes to both of them. So outside, of course, like we are network infrastructure and kind of the connectivity provider and the equipment provider for operators. Like in UK, there might be BT. In US, there could be AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. And we're present in almost every country of the world. So that's the outdoors part. Of course, we try to do really great networks outdoors. But the interesting thing is actually indoors. I think a lot of the metaverse as it happens today is actually indoors. And that can happen either on your Wi-Fi connection, or it happens on something that leverages mobile connectivity via, and now I don't want to be too telecom specific because maybe some audience doesn't know the terms. There's a product, it's called fixed wireless access, which kind of converts your outdoors mobile connectivity into your indoor Wi-Fi. That's one aspect. And then actually we release a mobility report every, I believe, quarter or so. And there it shows that we spend most of our time indoors as human beings. I might be different. I love ultra running and all that kind of outdoor stuff. But then Most people are just indoors, like when we're at work, we're indoors, and so on and so forth. And we spend 90% of our time indoors, according to this mobility report that we published. And 80% of mobile data is consumed indoors. And that's our outdoors mobile connectivity that we're using indoors, because not everywhere we have our home Wi-Fi available. So mobile networks play a huge role in how actually we interact and use the metaverse. And then, of course, all the innovations that we do, all the features that we do to enhance our mobile networks as Ericsson, we are thinking of the metaverse and how can we make that experience any better.
So digging a little deeper on that. So, you know, talking about connectivity being consumed on mobile and predominantly indoors. When we think about metaverse, oftentimes people look at this technology of extended reality, right? And it's this concept. And you mentioned Niantic, and augmented reality sits under that umbrella. How do you see XR devices working in this ecosystem and evolving to leverage technologies like 5G and potentially, you know, 6G in the near future as well, which you know, is already, I'm sure, under development?
Yeah, let's dive into that. I mean, I think first of all, yeah, there's this aspect of already a lot of the connectivity is being consumed via mobile networks. And I think now us partnering with device vendors as well as the ecosystem, the kind of developer platforms that exist to leverage any type of XR application, we see there's a lot of opportunities in our architecture and how platform developers design the architecture of XR applications. So, for example, I mean, it's a no-brainer that if you manage to offload more of your rendering, more of your computation onto a cloud, onto a local edge site, you can make your device a little bit skinnier because it no longer needs to all be computed on the device side. So that's one of the big aspects. Another thing is we're actually working, being here in Silicon Valley, I work with D15, our lab, and our lab here is actually very keen on working together with the ecosystem, bringing device vendors together, bringing XR type of platform vendors together with our operator customers, of course, to test and ensure the architecture works really great together. The new devices that come out, like these guys, like they have a lot of classroom kind of stuff because they test all the brand new devices for XR as well, but also, of course, for like the kind of smartphones that just get released to make sure that they work the best that they can on our networks. And then they also define and work together of like, hey, what could be a great new architecture that will enable a much better user experience. And this is something that the user can like experience right away. You know, when your network quality is bad, like you notice it right away. Like your interactions are kind of bad. You have a lag, you have a latency, and this is something we also consider. Like, okay, if we do some type of remote rendering, kind of edge compute, what effect does it have on the player and then or the user? Like also thinking, of course, on industrial application, and that's a whole nother area that we're super excited about. So that's one of the areas for innovation that we see and how we interact. Another one is actually also working with the developer ecosystem and driving that forward. Our vision, especially towards 6G. I mean, 5G is great as it is, but then we also did some study and published that externally and say like, hey, networks, it was a US-based study, networks today, only 32% of networks meet the minimum requirement for XR applications. So it's not great at this point. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of really creating an awesome experience for the user. And on the one side, we will leverage programmable networks where we really make sure that the developer can interact ideally with the network and make sure that they ensure ideal conditions for your experience. That's one side. And then, of course, the other side is also with the operator, improving the network build out, maybe making networks even more efficient through AI and all of these applications. I think there's a lot of potential for Gen AI as well in the future with XR applications. Like, just imagine like rendering maybe on the spot even with using Gen AI, different parts, and mobile networks can also play a big role in that. We're working towards 6G with the regulators, of course, to ensure that, I mean, a lot of it is just throughput and capacity, of course. Like, the higher your bit rates, the better your experience. So we're also working with regulators. And again, not getting too much into the deeds of telecom, but spectrum plays a big role of like how much capacity and bandwidth can be achieved. So we're working towards that our customers, the operators, can get that further. Yeah, many areas that we can actually impact and try to influence and work quite actively with the ecosystem to make Metaverse a reality and an amazing experience for everyone using it.
No, that's awesome. And you know, I play video games. I've experienced Metaverse worlds at the moment, and the last thing you'd want in a virtual reality setting, especially a game environment, when you're deep into a game, is for there to be lag, for and these technologies they're speeding up, right?
Yeah.
But when do you think, and this is kind of an off the cuff question, but when do you think, or how far out do you think we are from a real like a mass market metaverse world where everyone is able to engage and act in the same environment and the latency is reduced enough? I mean, it's probably a very difficult question to answer, but what are your thoughts?
That's the billion-dollar question that everyone wants to know. And the question is really, what will it take and what needs to be first? I mean, normally, I think, and if you ask our customers, they will also probably say the same. Like, probably the network needs to be there first, because if you develop an application that kind of has the requirement of a really great network connectivity, but the network connectivity is not there, you kind of have the same issue that Niantic had when they start, right? So that's something to consider. And when that will be there, I mean, again, we're working with regulators, and it's hard to predict, of course, when they will open more spectrum. I think we'll see 6G with even higher bit rates and these programmable network capabilities starting to emerge in the next few years, even though I believe our programmable network, which could put you in a position that it actually enables developers for certain applications, like, let's say, this and that XR application or company can have dedicated and prioritized throughput and latency. So that could enable it faster, because out of the capacity that exists today, we call network slicing, you would get a bigger chunk guaranteed or better insured. So that could accelerate it towards that without having a homogeneous network build out across the board. 6G timelines is around, I think, 2028 or so. We start seeing more the emergence 2029, 2030, which is quite far away. But we do believe with slicing programmable networks and the availability of more spectrum, that could actually happen even sooner. Now that's one aspect. We also do believe that XR applications and XR devices specifically will be more tailored towards 5G and 6G, and not just be capable for Wi-Fi, but also have that capability in the next. My personal assessment would be, from what I'm seeing from the market, maybe in the next 2 years, more and more releases will happen, actually, that we will actually have a 5G XR headset device that you can get. I'm sure prototypes of that exist today. I think also mass market will largely depend on price point. I mean, I loved seeing the Apple Vision Pro. I did not get to try it out personally, but like looking at like how it looks, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And this is when I was like really starting to believe, wow, this will be a mass market thing, the way that Apple really shows the utility of it, like how people can actually enjoy using it. It does require a certain bit of quality, but the price point is insane, right? And not everyone can spend their, what is it, $4,000 or something like that. So I think if we can make these really more high-end use cases and applications translate to a better price point, I think that that's the biggest barrier of entry to the kind of clients that you have who are like, oh, I really love my tech gadgets and I'll get it first because I'm really into it, versus to everyone more on a wider scale. So I think it's an ecosystem kind of having to work together to achieve all these things at the same time. And when they all intersect, this is basically when we will have that mass market adaptation. And I think, I do think the opportunity for that is probably within around 2 years. And I do think consumer first is an approach here, because there's also this whole aspect of industrial metaverse. And I think that is super powerful. And I can see how kind of a remote inspection kind of setting and all of these normal industrial use cases are really great and relevant. But you can only target a certain amount of people at a time and certain amount of quantities at a time within an enterprise use case. Versus going to consumers, I think the potential for mass market adaptation is much, much higher.
Well, 2 years out, you heard it here, right? Exciting. I mean, it's I'm definitely an Apple sucker. I will probably end up getting the headset, but you know, it is extortionately priced, right? And you know, it's not for the mass market yet. So obviously, we've talked a lot about the technology layer, and I would like to talk a little on your vision for the metaverse and this terminology of metaverse, because we're talking more on the technology side. But before we do, I did want to kind of touch lastly on, you know, the other technologies that you're touching. You mentioned AI before, but like we've got kind of the blockchain, satellite, quantum computing, and I imagine kind of in your capacity, you have fingers in a few of these pies. So I wanted to understand whether you're, you know, at a broad level, how some of these other technologies come into play, particularly when we talk about the metaverse.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, again, I get to have this super fun job of looking into disruptive technologies that are not as mainstream. So these technologies that I today focus on, and the nice thing is also they change in terms of how other technologies get added as they emerge, right? But this year in 2023, which is about to end, I did focus mainly, aside from Metaverse, I looked also like blockchain and Web3 and what kind of role that plays. And I looked into quantum technologies. I see there's a lot of opportunity there, satellite technologies, and even digital airspace. And when we think about, and all of these technologies, I think will play a role as they will emerge, or most of them anyways, as they will emerge in the near future to actually ensure a better experience for the metaverse. So quantum is one of my most talked about topics, just because I believe it needs more of an advocate. When I first looked into it and asked people, hey, when will it happen? People were like, oh, 30 years from now. But I actually believe it's not true. I do believe that there's a lot of opportunities for, again, not diving too deep into the subject matter, but there's opportunities to actually leverage quantum properties on classical computers. And classical computers is basically what you and I have in front of right now as we're talking. So any type of computer. And quantum, the benefit of it is it yields super high speed up for computations that needs parallelization that we today are just limited in. So that can mean like quantum AI, for example, is an awesome field that I recently released a blog on, which I think has a lot of opportunity. So it can accelerate AI, but also, for example, in gaming, rendering computations could be a great opportunity. As quantum technologies mature, they will also rapidly accelerate the quality of metaverse that we get, basically, if you translate it directly to that. So I think quantum advancements will play a huge role, not just in telecom and making our networks better, but also in the applications of end users directly. So that's a huge one. We have satellite technology. Satellite technologies are super, super cool. We had so many announcements, and I personally love them because a lot of these vendors focus on this emergency use case. And being an ultra trail runner, I'm outside all the time in the middle of nowhere where there's no connectivity whatsoever for various reasons, right? And satellite can actually address that. And now all of a sudden I feel so much more safe being out there. However, going to like some satellite specific conferences, I also realized that the industry agrees that we will converge, and the same for telecom standardization, that we will converge more into a wider connectivity with satellites. Like right now, bitrate is very limited. However, in the future, and don't ask me when that will be, but in the future, we see the opportunity for more broadband use cases and higher bit rates through satellites. So that will enable also a more seamless transition between terrestrial networks, non-terrestrial networks, just as we walk outside and leverage that connectivity, especially in areas that do not have connectivity today. So that's a really big one. Blockchain, where do I start? I mean, that's such a huge topic. Of course, I also published a blog earlier this year about Web3, blockchain, and the metaverse, and how, of course, decentralization plays a huge role in how we manage assets, manage ownership. NFTs, I think, is a super relevant topic. I mean, of course, payment currency is another super relevant topic, but these are more the public blockchains on a different scale. Telecom networks have really, really great use cases for private blockchains, and we leverage that a lot at Ericsson for network rollout, and improve the quality of our networks with that, bring the networks faster to the market through blockchain and the automations that it brings, and of course the fast, we use it to validate our network rollouts with the different vendors involved. We also use it for certain financial transactions and working with different banks. Again, that's more private, a blockchain, so it has kind of a different application. You can access it, sustainability impacts, and so on and so forth. But the concept is very similar, and even looking into in the future as well, into more ownerships and assets of like our network equipment, supply chain, and even monitoring sustainability impact. So we see a lot of more potential to grow in using blockchain in very similar purposes as it is envisioned for the metaverse.
Awesome. I really love that. And you've closed out there with this topic of the metaverse. I'd love to ask firstly for your kind of definition of the metaverse with this kind of technology lens that you bring, and really, are we there yet? But I wanted to understand as well, sort of Ericsson. How does Ericsson, and you've mentioned, some of the blog writing you've done and the technology innovation you've explored. How do you approach as an organization staying on the forefront of the innovation to help be ready for and help sculpt the evolving landscape of the metaverse? So loaded question.
Yes, it is. It is. Where do I start? I mean, first of all, Ericsson is present in 180 countries and has customers in 180 countries. Most of these customers are the operators, which are super, super interested in the metaverse succeeding and take a huge part in also shaping that. And some of these customers are in countries where we are present, are more on the forefront of like what is happening with the metaverse and how can we shape it. So on top of course the regulatory part, where we play a big role to ensure the connectivity layer is really in great shape, we are working with the customers, but also together with the ecosystem to drive use cases and features in the network. So one such example is here in Silicon Valley, where there's quite a unique position of bringing together. We have the XR platforms working together with the devices, working and device vendors, working together with the operators, and also, especially in Silicon Valley, all of these have like some kind of sites and headquarters. On top of that, we also have the hyperscalers, like your Google, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft, of course. We work with all of them, right? To really shape how can we improve the experience and make things better and drive adaptation for the users. That's Silicon Valley, but of course, like all across the world, we are leveraging that. For example, I was fortunate to work a couple of months in Korea before, and there we have SKT and the IFLAN, which is super relevant as well. Like Korea is such a forerunner in technology. They are always racing kind of US and the vendors here to like who can bring 5G to the market first, who has this amazing innovation first. They're super high tech minded. So I think a similar thing is happening for the metaverse and is happening for 6G. So we see we love how our customers kind of challenge us to be better and drive innovation faster and work actively with us to pursue it and bring it to the market faster. And these are just two examples. I mean, Japan is super advanced as well. China is super advanced as well. Europe, I'm from Germany, so of course a lot of things are happening over there as well. Ericsson is headquartered in Sweden, near Stockholm, and Stockholm is the unicorn capital of the world. So leveraging this startup ecosystem as well in all of that creation. So I think we have our hands a little bit in everywhere, like some areas more than others, of course, but I'm definitely happy to be part of being so close to all the actors shaping how the metaverse will evolve and what it will actually look like.
I love that. It's very exciting speaking to you, hearing about all of these touch points you have with customers around the world and that global perspective as well. And the race, it's a race to kind of get there first in some ways. But do you think for the future the metaverse will follow the same kind of, Meta as a company, we're trying to get there first to market, to kind of have that brand of we are driving the metaverse, but we're pioneering it?
Oh, that's so hard to say, I would say, because I feel like when we look at Web 3.0 and that concept, everything would get more and more connected. And I think there's some, and therefore meaning that, yes, developers will have more access to it, and also the different platforms would be interconnected in one way or another. That would be the vision, right, of kind of total decentralization. But then at the same time, I do believe that like there's some vendors out there that have a lot of almost monopoly in that area, and they can define which way you go. For example, if Apple goes and closes up their ecosystem with their Vision Pro, I think that will be one side of the story that will be hard to access. And I mean, they historically it has happened with the iPhones, but then maybe aspects like App Store, which they will offer as well, I believe, can open it back up. So I feel like a lot of these things are so driven by strategic decisions of just certain few players. And I look forward to the startups, the unicorns, the new applications to totally disrupt that. And I hope they will do that. And I believe the more smaller and newer companies leverage more an open ecosystem and kind of more open source things. They engage the developer platforms just to outsource the capacity of like development that happens. So from that perspective, that makes a lot of sense. And absolutely, the vision that Ericsson has is also the programmable networks, which we will then provide basically to such companies, any companies really. end users and developers, where you can do this type of prioritization of your networks and really ensure that the right services get where they're needed. So I think as a company, as Ericsson, our strategy or our vision is more towards, yes, the open ecosystem where everyone can leverage these programmable networks. However, I think the reality will really depend on the market. And I think the market goes where you will see, and the adaptation goes where you see profitability. So if you have these super high-end devices, back to that kind of discussion, what's the barrier of entry to actually buy them? Is it attractive enough for people to invest that money? When you have smaller companies and startup, will they look more for mass market adaptation with like maybe cheaper devices, which is hard to do when you're a startup, and so on and so forth. I think a lot of like economics play a role in that as well. So yeah, I believe, I really hope that it becomes more open and more accessible and less siloed, for sure. But I think the reality is definitely defined by whoever manages to get that mass market adaptation first. I think it's going to be like who's first to break the barriers.
Well, the race is on. I'm excited to see how it develops. Well, look, thank you so much for joining today and talking us through your experience and your vision for the future. Obviously, you're going to be joining us at Metaverse Day. Going to be speaking in a lot more depth around this with some of your competitors, peers, market peers from other major telecoms. And I'm very excited for that session. So if you're interested in joining that, there will be a link in the description. We have a free ticket available as well, meaning we're able to invite everyone to come and learn about the future of the metaverse. So please do join us. But for people who are listening in on this session, Tatiana, I'd love to invite the audience to understand a bit more about where they can find you and any updates. You mentioned your blog. Where would people be able to find that?
Yeah, I mean, just look into Ericsson.com. We have really great blogs. We have a huge blog series about the metaverse and a lot of thoughts about that, of course. So just visit Ericsson.com and check it out. You can type in my name and Ericsson.com and you see all the fun stuff I just mentioned. And I think if you want to just connect to us more in person, one of the biggest events in telecom where we normally have a really big presence is Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. That's going to happen end of February. So if you want to engage, if you are maybe coming more from the startup side, from the enterprise side, like this is where you can find us, talk to us. We normally have a lot of stuff about the metaverse in there as well, and you can try it firsthand, what kind of architecture we're designing to make the experience better, what kind of handsets we're working with, and like what will be the impact of 5G and 6G on the metaverse specifically. We have so many cool demos there.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you very much once again, Tatiana. We'll see you on the 24th and 25th of January. But for everyone listening in, thank you for joining, and I hope you learned something new. And we'll see you very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.